Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Swish City, where we're doing our power rankings, leading up to the NBA season, ranking each team 30 to 1, looking at their additions, subtractions, who they brought back, players that I think fit in well with the team, players that I don't necessarily think fit in well, and ultimately my record prediction for each team. If you guys have been following the channel, you guys have been knowing we've been breaking these down leading up to the season, so if you want to catch up on those, go check out the recent videos. But if not, if you're up to date, as you guys can tell from the thumbnail, as you guys can tell from the title, we're going to be diving in and discussing the Memphis Grizzlies in today's episode. So without further ado, let's get ready and let's dive into it. So the Memphis Grizzlies last season had a disappointing year where they finished 13th in the Western Conference due to an abundance of injuries. Even though they did suffer an amount of injuries, though, to many of their star players, it allowed the Grizzlies to kind of find some diamonds in the rough and ultimately find out some core pieces that are going to be with the team for the future that we're going to be diving in a little bit later. But let's look at the Grizzlies and look at some additions, subtractions, and who they kept. Looking at departures, the Grizzlies only lost two players, Yuta Watanabe and Zaire Williams. Zaire Williams was traded to the Nets for the Grizzlies to be able to get a open roster spot, and Yuta Watanabe agreed to a deal with the China Jets. I believe that this is due to the fact that Yuta Watanabe knew that there was no really role for him in the NBA. He was traded to the Grizzlies on a three-team deal with the Suns, where he was traded with four other minimum players to the Nets, and then he was rerouted to Memphis. With additions, even though it does say they did add Mami Diake, they did not add Mami Diake, as Mami Diake was then traded to the Phoenix Suns. So Mami Diake is not with this team. The only player that they did bring in, the only player that they did return was Luke Kennard, who returned on a 1 year deal, and they had to ship out Zaire Williams to be able to bring in Luke Kennard on that 1 year deal, as obviously they were over the roster limit. They needed that additional shooting from Kennard. When looking at this team's roster, as we can see, courtesy of Spot Track, John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson, the main focal points of this team, are the top three highest paid players. Marcus Smart, who was an addition last season but dealt with an abundance of injuries as well, is looking to make a key impact into this team. And Brandon Clark, who's also coming off an injury last year that hindered him for all of the season, is also looking to make some impact. The Grizzlies did select Zach Edey with their first round pick to replace center Steven Adams, who they traded last year. And like I said, they have an abundance of young talent on this team with a lot of players that could earn possible roles. We saw Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. both earn those roles, and even a player in Scottie Pippen Jr. is also one that can maybe earn a contract with this team. The Grizzlies entering training camp only have 20 guys under roster, and 14 of those guys are under contract. Therefore, the Grizzlies do still have one open roster spot and could utilize that roster spot before the season starts to bring in an additional player. A player that I've discussed that I think they could look out to add is Markelle Fultz, due to the fact that they also did lose Derrick Rose, as they did decide to waive him, and he announced his retirement this off season as well, needing some backup point guard minutes. But now that we've kind of broken down this Grizzlies team, kind of going over why I kind of have them coming in here, let's look at some players that I think fit in with this team that I'm really, really looking forward to see this year, and also some players that I think might need some changes of scenery. First, let's dive in and let's talk about one of my favorite players on this Grizzlies team, and that is Marcus Smart. So Marcus Smart was acquired from the Memphis Grizzlies last offseason in a three-team deal which sent Kristaps Porzingis to the Boston Celtics and Tyus Jones with a numerous amount of other things for the Celtics sent to the Washington Wizards. Smart was brought onto this team to kind of be another guard, maybe to come off the bench or even to slot in and play some 2/3 at that wing position, having a three-guard lineup with John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Marcus Smart. Smart, the defensive player of the year not too long ago, just 2 seasons back, still brought that defensive prowess, and Memphis, being a grit and grind city, wanted Marcus Smart for years before finally acquiring him via trade last off season. Now, Smart unfortunately dealt with some injuries throughout the season that never let him fully get his stint in with the Grizzlies, and that's something that I think has kind of hindered kind of where you can kind of analyze how he fits in. Ultimately, Smart never got a true opportunity to play with this team, a fully healthy team. So could he really fit in at that three spot, and could they play a three-guard lineup? We ultimately don't know. Could he come off the bench and be a six-man-esque guy for this team, having some defensive position scoring at the guard position for them? That could also be a thing added for this Memphis Grizzlies team. Ultimately, I think Marcus Smart truly is going to resemble grit and grind and be a cornerstone piece. I know his name has been thrown in some trade rumors over the past couple months, and I think that's teams just wanting Marcus Smart, not necessarily Memphis wanting to give him up. Ultimately, I think Smart will have a run with this team for the first half of the season at least, seeing how he fits in. Now, if he deals with some injuries or he's not the best fit, then I could see a move that the Grizzlies make if they still want to be playoff contenders, if they're still making a push to obviously increase their chances of making a deeper run while also filling in a role that they lack. But ultimately, I do think Smart will make an impact with this team, will be a key piece for this team, and will be a major contributor for the Grizzlies. And another player that I want to break down, who's been getting a lot of hype from Grizzlies training camp, from a lot of Grizzlies players, is Jake LaRavia. Now, Jake LaRavia has been one of the young pieces for the Grizzlies that hasn't really blossomed. Guys like Scottie Pippen Jr., guys like Vince Williams, guys like G.G. Jackson have kind of taken over that role at that wing position over LaRavia, even though he had been here for a season previous. Now, LaRavia still is working on his sound of the game, but he's coming up to be a very solid defender in this Grizzlies system, and that is what he's said to be wary about. LaRavia, if he gets the opportunity, can slot in at that small forward / power forward position and really bring some defensive grit and force to this Grizzlies team. As we all know, like I said with Marcus Smart, the Grizzlies embrace that grit and grind mentality. So that's what they're going to instill in their players and look for when they're drafting and bringing in players for their organization. So having a player like LaRavia, who kind of wants to learn this mentality and kind of embrace this mentality and kind of get into it is huge for his development and also going to be huge for the Memphis Grizzlies. I see him inserting himself into that bench role at that backup small forward / power forward, and if he can make some impacts at that role, he could be a key role piece for this team in a deep playoff push, where he could even make some splashes and make some name for himself in pursuing a bigger career. So those are players that I really like on this Grizzlies team. I think we could see some rise in them this year. But let's kind of look at some players that not necessarily that I don't like, but I don't think really fit in. And when discussing those players, we're obviously going to be looking at these two in John Conchar and Brandon Clarke. Now let's talk about Clarke first, as he's also dealt with some injuries similar to Marcus Smart. So you may be asking, Bruce, why do you obviously value Marcus Smart a little bit more? Brandon Clarke's also had some injury problems. Why aren't you happy about him? Because that's the main issue why you're not happy with him. And the reason is because Brandon Clarke is in a log-jammed forward position for this team. As we know, Jaren Jackson is this team's rim protector, and Brandon Clarke can work alongside of him, but Brandon Clarke does work his best as that secondary unit, power forward / center. Now with the obviously emergence of Zach Edey, first round pick, top 10 pick, and standout, a lot of fans are in Memphis and around the NBA have been hyping up this Ja Edey tandem, with also having Santi Aldama, who's also a stretch big added to this lineup. With having those three kind of being their primarily bigs, I think Brandon Clarke kind of falls out in this system. With him being injured, it's just a case of just not having that time to amply to grow. But unfortunately for Clarke, I think the writing might be on the wall as of the early as this season for him, as he's still a young, enticing enough piece for a lot of young teams to kind of buy in and want to get in for, where the Grizzlies could realize, hey, he's not really fitting in with their system, he's not really getting much playing time, let's move off of him and let's get another piece that can help us contend, because we already have LaRavia playing the backup 4, we already have Aldama playing the backup 5, we are chilling. Then, when you look at Conchar, his name was also thrown around rumors last season through most of the season. I think he was like one of the main names the Grizzlies were kind of just trying to throw around, and that was just because he was a veteran type of guy, and they had a bunch of young guys. So maybe if Conchar's name could be tossed, they could get some more young draft capital, or maybe even another young piece. But unfortunately for the Grizzlies, that did not happen. Now Conchar could still his name could be still thrown. He could, seemingly fit in, but like I said, this Grizzlies team could utilize him playing some more guard minutes with the loss of Derrick Rose. But if they do go out to sign a point guard or look to address that need with a two-way or an Exhibit 10-day contract or even a trade, John Conchar's name could also have some writing on the wall here in Memphis, as it already had previously in the season beforehand. He's a solid defender, he's a really, really good contributor as a veteran and a pretty good role player, but he's not really specifically going to stand out in any aspect to make you be like, ooh, John Conchar, I need that player on my team. But if you are a contending team, if you want a guy who can maybe play some low end minutes for you, 10 minutes a game, maybe be a bench guy, maybe even filling in 5 to 6 minutes for some injuries or stuff like that, Conchar could definitely be your guy to do those for you. So, like I said, with this Grizzlies team, I really like them. They're a young, inspiring team, dealt with a lot of injuries last year, but I'm expecting this year for them to take a leap. Now, they were kind of back and forth with the team that I did put ahead of them, so unfortunately, the Grizzlies did fall in seventh here in the Western Conference, but I do think that this Western Conference is going to be a bloodbath. It is going to be super close, and basically any team from 5 or 6 to 10 basically can swap, I truly think. So it's going to be a gauntlet. It's truly going to be who is healthy, who is the top tier team. And unfortunately for the Grizzlies, they already have some injuries kind of going into the season. Guys like Gigi Jackson have already suffered injuries. Guys like Vince Williams have already suffered injuries. This is not already good for a team that dealt with the injury bug last year. So ultimately, I have them coming in seventh. And with my record prediction, I have the Grizzlies finishing in at 48-36, the same record as the Cleveland Cavaliers, but finishing out just a little bit better due to some tiebreakers. Ultimately, like I said, I think the Grizzlies are a tough team in the Western Conference. Could even be higher. I think I've seen people rank them as high as 3 in the Western Conference. I think if fully healthy, they are a top 4, top 5 team in this West. But with already seeing some injuries come through late before the season has even started, I'm a little weary on how they're going to be able to handle those depth issues. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Where would you guys rank the Memphis Grizzlies in your power rankings? Do you have them at 7th in the West? Do you have them this high, this low? Do you like my analyzations? Let me know down below in the comment section as I revive this channel. You guys have been absolutely fantastic at showing your love and support, and I really do appreciate it. Once again, I'm Bruce Velez. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode here, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out.